Alrighty then, thank you very much for joining 420 Law Office Radio. This is Stuart Richland from 420 Law Office here in California, and what an exciting couple weeks it's been. Let's start with a nice summary here by Nick Hsu. California cities cannot ban medical marijuana dispensaries, appeals court rules. In a somewhat strange and unexpected ruling yesterday, the California Court of Appeals ruled that California cities cannot ban medical marijuana dispensaries so long as they cultivate cannabis at the same location. The 48-page ruling in the case of Lake Forest versus Evergreen Collective, one of several collectives the city shut down for violating its ban on pot clubs. Because state law allows for medical marijuana collectives to cultivate and distribute cannabis to members, the court stated, a local government cannot ban as a nuisance exactly what the legislature contemplated would occur at cooperatives and collective medical marijuana cultivation sites. One of the downsides of this ruling is that although it affirms the rights of dispensaries to exist, it seems to add a new twist, which is that the dispensaries must entirely grow all of their medicine at the location, which is both a sitting duck for federal prosecution as well as robberies. How this is going to play out will be interesting, as many of the collectives already do cultivate on site, although not necessarily all of them cultivate all of the medicine that their patients need, nor could they. When you consider that the average collective may only be 1,000 or 2 square feet in the city, and that it may require acres of space to grow enough medicine for that many patients. And the other interesting case that's down the pike right now, Colvin, the Attorney General doesn't specify exactly how it views the cultivation, but the court comes down and says, well, no, not everyone needs to cultivate. Comparing the marijuana collectives to grocery cooperatives in the Colvin case in the 2nd District, the court pointed out that in a grocery cooperative, there may be many members who grow and sell the food, and then other members that pay a fee to become a member and just shop there. This is an interesting time for conflicting cases to kind of all come together, and the timing is right for these two cases, Colvin and the Evergreen case, to be joined together with the other cases that are currently being reviewed by our California Supreme Court. And those are the cases that purported to allow a ban, and the case that disallowed the lottery, the PAC and the Inland Empire cases. So we have a bunch of conflicting rulings, but I think the trend is clear. The trend is supporting medical marijuana rights, and thank goodness. You know, this evening's program is going to be mostly focused around an interview or two, one with Ruben from the GEM, just kind of saying hello, the Journal for the Education for Medical Marijuana. You know, Ruben's participation has been really important in Southern California's medical marijuana rights movement, because the GEM has proven to be the long-lasting voice and meeting place of the patients and their collectives. Even the advertisements are a mind-blower to take a look at, and the content is good and continues to improve. So I'm glad Ruben came over to say hello. So support Ruben's magazine, and we'll tell you all about how you can watch it, check it out online. But the heart and soul of tonight's show is the interview with Caregiver X. Caregiver X is a local LA dude whose wife came down with cancer, diagnosed in the last couple months. And his story and her story underscore the desperate importance of collectives and why it's an error for city council members to think it's sufficient for patients to be able to get their own medicine or to have a caregiver grow it. It's very important that we have collectives and co-ops. And the reason is that no one ever knows when they may need to avail themselves of this medicine, and not everyone has the relationships in place to facilitate the medicine without a collective or a co-op. Let's go ahead and join with caregiver X, someone whose wife is currently going through a second round of chemo.
Hello?
Test. Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
All right. Well, we're going to name you Caregiver X. And, ladies and gentlemen, as I now introduce this person, I'm on my soapbox and things get abstract sometimes. This is an opportunity to hear sort of something a little bit more concrete. Caregiver, tell me a little bit about the circumstances that bring about your call into the show.
Well, the story is that my wife was diagnosed with cancer several months ago, and she had to have some radical surgery and is now undergoing radical chemotherapy. And the doctors have provided us with countless numbers of medications, both for the chemotherapy, but also to help counter the side effects, pain, aching, nausea, diarrhea, anorexia. Basically, the first few days on the chemotherapy, she was fine, and then the 5 or 6 different medications they gave me seemed to help at least keep some of the worst symptoms at bay. And around day 6, she just literally fell off a cliff. I mean, it was frightening what was happening to her. She was becoming dangerously dehydrated. She lost a tremendous amount of weight. She couldn't keep anything, even her own saliva would cause her to throw up. I mean, it was just agony, and I had nothing that the doctors gave me that was working to soothe her. And finally, I was able to get her some medical marijuana as a patient, and it was in the form of a lozenge that she could suck on in spite of the terrible sores that the chemotherapy had started to produce in her mouth and esophagus and throat. And almost immediately, it was miraculous. And I mean, I cannot overemphasize miraculous. She got, within 20 minutes, huge relief. And after having 2 doses of the lozenges, and now, basically a couple of doses per day of these lozenges, she's begun to eat again. She had lost over 35 pounds, and believe me when I tell you, she was not a heavy, she was not overweight to begin with. She was perfect. I mean, she started looking, like an Auschwitz, victim or something. I mean, she's eating again. She's able to, we were able to have friends over to visit with her and lift her spirits. I mean, these were things that were impossible to imagine. And I feel so relieved, I can't even tell you, and that going into this second round of chemotherapy, I am now armed with something that actually will work and will give her relief from the terrible suffering and keep her alive even, because I was worried with her losing so much weight that, that she couldn't eat, that she would just, go from that alone. And I feel like I've got something that can help save us, to help get us through the worst of the times with this and keep her comfortable. And it angers me so much that my own doctors, and I pay plenty good money for really top-notch health insurance, could not directly provide me with this, that it had to be something that they had to say, hey, you're going to have to go somewhere where you can get this prescription from someone and get this. I can't even tell you in our HMO that I can't even advise you to do this because it's against the HMO policy because of everything. I mean, it infuriates me that these politicians, both in Washington and elsewhere, have so little compassion. They, as soon as someone sees, I've always felt strongly in favor of it because I know people who told me it was the only thing that helped them, but I witnessed something that was beyond. I mean, I can't even tell you how I felt like I felt like I finally could comfort her and allow her to survive this horrible ordeal. And that's my story, and I hope that you're moved to understand this is so much more than anything abstract for me. This is, we live day by day fighting this battle and having this amazing tool in the arsenal to help us is just a godsend. Just a godsend.
Would you state that the foregoing statement is true under penalty of perjury?
Oh, this is coming from my heart, and I hope people can hear in my voice the agony of watching someone you love suffer, and nothing that the doctors are able to give you directly helping, and then finding something that gave so much relief so quickly. It was medicine for me just to be able to have something that was helping her.
Well, of course, what you're saying is 1,000% accurate. It is the reason that this office exists. It is the reason that the California Medical Marijuana Initiative exists. And, what's really upsetting is politically, as we do this battle, lives are at stake, suffering has no measure, and until the pit of suffering is emptied, it is only the loving kindness and bravery of the patients caring for each other that is keeping this culture alive. It's a knowledge. Imagine if we didn't have the knowledge of this plant. And then imagine if there weren't people brave enough to take the risk of going to jail in order to get it to the patients, like your wife. And the thing is that some politicians are a little bit ignorant. They say that they're well-meaning about medical marijuana. Some of them have said, like the city councilmen have said, well, patients can get their marijuana themselves by growing it or have a caregiver. But that's not really true. Your wife's example is a perfect example of why we need collectives. You see, it's only collectives that would have enabled someone on the short notice. I mean, when did she get diagnosed? Just a couple months ago.
Yep. It's not even like I would have had any idea how to either produce, the right strength of plants and then be able to process it into this lozenge that she was able to consume in spite of her illness.
That's right.
All of these things I would have been entirely beyond me without the world of the collective and the people who enable us caregivers and the patients to find the relief that they need,
That's exactly right. And the thing is, sometimes some politicians have seen that the collectives have candies or Rice Krispie treats or lozenges or suckers, and they make the false assumption that the collective members are pandering to children. They just don't realize that people who are that sick just cannot digest a regular food solid, but a sucker or a lozenge is very easy for the patients to assimilate. And just as you've said, who's got the skill and knowledge to make a sucker or a lozenge out of cannabis? Only the collectives provide the joining together of knowledge and of resources and experiences. And what winds up happening oftentimes is there's a very sweet little old lady patient or a little old man patient who happens to know how to be a candy maker or who is a candy maker and who knows how to bring the alchemy of, getting the principal element of the cannabis out into an oil and then reintegrating that oil into a candy base. That is not something that is done to entice children or to intoxicate or surprise someone. The reason that the candies are made is just for people like your wife who cannot digest anything else. And then later on, when her digestive system's a little better, the Rice Krispie treats are the next closest thing to nothing. They are so simple to digest. They're very simple to make. They just contain toasted rice and a little butter and the cannabis and a little marshmallow. And it's something that's easy. But at the stage that your wife is in, I mean, with sores in the mouth, there is no edible even, or let alone, of course, smoking, which would just probably be very irritating. But the idea that this lozenge exists is fantastic, and that's something for which I thank the brave patients and collectives, and I know you do, of this state. And your story is just so poignant. Is there anything else that you would like to add? And if not,
all I can say is that I've known other people who've been patients and who have benefited, but until I had this firsthand experience and saw how many things were spontaneously alleviated. She's gained back several pounds, thank God, so that now she can go into this next round of chemo. I mean, so many things have been alleviated. She couldn't take pain medications that they were offering to her because those caused her to be constipated and were hurting her digestive system, which was part of where one of her cancers was. I mean, all of these things. Suddenly there's this one thing that someone said, the only thing that gave me relief was these. I found someone who had lozenges, and I sought someone out who could help me find them through a collective. I mean, there's no resources outside of the collectives for this sort of thing, and I thank you people for keeping that network together and growing that network. It's otherwise our governments, just simply many people in them, are so stuck for whatever reason they can't make it possible. And I'm thankful for those that are fighting the brave fight and taking care of this community.
Well, right on, and thank you for your sharing your experience and adding to the tidal wave of voices that are joining together and demanding that our government reform itself to conform with reality and science and experience and not with hysteria. Well,
exactly.
Caregiver X, I wish you and yours Godspeed.
Thank you, and
care.
Thank you for giving my story a voice. I appreciate that, and the platform. Thank you.
Take care.
There's a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Do you recognize those words? Those words of Mario Savio. He became the unofficial leader of the Berkeley free speech movement, before my time even. And then he wound up going back to school after an interesting political and radical phase and became a professor. Died a bit young, but spoke about the machine. How long are we going to continue to support a machine which does not even support the sick among us, not to mention everyone else?
You said something that always stuck with me. I never forgot it. And I wasn't that young a guy when you said it. It was actually kind of recent. It was about 5 years ago. And there was this situation that I'd been in. We were at dinner, and I fucking freaked out with my girlfriend at the time. And you said to me the next day, you go, dude, you got to become the star of the movie that you live in. You can't behave that way, because that's not what the star of the movie would do. In other words, you make a choice as to how you behave and who you want to be. And that is a series of choices.
You can choose to be someone that you would admire.
That's exactly fucking right. And that's not easy to do. It takes responsibility. It takes saying no to a lot of shit. But
it does. But it's important.
Also, in a way, it is easier in a way.
It is.
You make your fucking choice. And I think you also know exactly. I always find people who act like they're really confused and they'll ask me advice about how to live their life. And I start looking at them like, dude, you know exactly what you're supposed to do.
Yes, but no. It is very confusing if you haven't made steps already.
Yeah.
If you're one of those people that have never ventured into the deep water and you're afraid to jump in, it's fucking scary. For a lot of people, any sort of change is terrifying.
Yeah.
Any movement, and I'm thinking about leaving this job and pursuing my dreams, that's fucking terrifying for a lot of people.
It is terrifying because a lot of times it doesn't work out. Trying to be as great as you can, like really trying to live up to your potential.
All right. Well, it's a pleasure here to have an in-person guest, Ruben Blue. Ruben has been publishing for, it's got to be 25 years here in Southern California, between Rock City News and his famous JEM. Now, JEM used to stand for the Journal for Education of Medical Marijuana. Now, I'm not sure what it stands for, but it's the JEM, and it's for the Journal for the Education of Medical Marijuana. It's been around a long time. How are you doing, Ruben?
Doing fine.
All right. Well,
you know, congratulations on how many years with the Gem now?
6.
6 years of free speech activity and freedom here in LA. Boy, you've seen a lot of changes, as I have, as this community has changed, right? Evolved.
Yes, we started up when the community started up, and we were LA's first medical marijuana magazine. And still today, we're the medical marijuana magazine.
Excellent. And I know something that's really cool about your magazine is that there's 2 things I really like about it. There's a lot of content and a lot of information, and the ads. Just going through the ads is mind-blowing.
Right. Someone told me that the Gem magazine had a big impact because just the fact that these city council people can pick up a big fat magazine and look at ad after page after page after page of full color ads, and just they look at that and they just give up. They say, we lost. The public response for marijuana is going to overflow us.
Yeah, well, I think that in a practical reality, you're absolutely right. My mic is over here, so stay with me.
Oh, okay.
So you do a monthly magazine called The Gem. It's available every month at, is it at magazine stands as well as the collectives?
Some magazine stands, but mostly all the collectives, all the doctors' offices. We do hit various high-profile coffee shops or smoke shops or stuff that's on the route, but normally at all the collectives.
So find a copy of The Gem, Gemm, at your neighborhood collective, or ask your magazine shop to call The Gem to have it there. And also, you have your magazine online now. In fact, it's really a really cool interface where you can go page to page.
Right, gemmag.com, and you can do the flip pages, and you can see every page, and you can flip through every page of the magazine, and you can blow it up to full, perfect resolution, and you can get it on your cell phone.
There you go. So that's Gemm magazine or Gemmag?
Gemmag.com.
Gemmag.com. All right. Well, there's Ruben Blue, the world-famous publisher and freedom fighter.
Let me say one thing before I go.
Sure.
The marijuana is the greatest plant on earth. Marijuana is such an enigma that nobody can figure out, not the government. Nobody can figure it out. And it's the one thing that's going to save the people from the corporations, because it is a plant that pharmaceutical companies cannot control, and no matter how hard they try, and it's so easy for people to grow that they're going to grow their own, and that it's going to be the symbol for change, and it's going to be the centerpiece of the Occupy movement. And the medical marijuana movement is the movement for civil rights and human rights in this world today.
I mean, absolutely. If we can't have total rights and dignity for people who are following their own doctor's recommendations for their health, then how can we even begin to call ourselves a civilization? Well, our forefathers didn't die for nothing. They shed a lot of blood for our Constitution, for our God-given rights to protect our freedom of speech and our freedom of the press. Here's one of the guys who maintains the freedom of the press. If you have a collective, if you have a political action committee, if you want to reach the marijuana population of patients here in LA and really throughout Southern California, get a hold of Ruben Blue at the Gem magazine and check out the magazine. I've been supporting the magazine with an ad for as long as I've known about it, and I intend to continue to do that. Take good care, Ruben. Thanks for visiting.
All right, thank you.
Well, there's so few people. I don't know any good doctor out there who's going to say, hey, take a joint. It's going to make you better.
Really? It only took us a few minutes to find a good doctor.
Dr. Lester Grinspoon, Professor of Psychiatry Emeritus at the Harvard Medical School.
Back in 1967, this professor spent 2 years studying the world's medical literature on the subject of marijuana.
I learned that despite my training in medicine and science, I had been brainwashed like just about every other citizen in this country, that marijuana was not only not a dangerous drug, but indeed it was remarkably non-toxic. And I had to revise my view of it.
And by a painful irony, he got to experience its benefits firsthand.
In 1967, my son, Danny, who was then 10 years old, was diagnosed as having acute lymphocytic leukemia. He had terrible nausea and vomiting with each session of cancer chemotherapeutic drugs. My wife and I heard about a young man in Houston, Texas, who had the same problem Danny had. This boy in Houston found that cannabis eliminated that nausea and vomiting altogether. So Danny smoked it 20 minutes before his next session. He had no nausea, no vomiting. He got off the table and said, "Mom, could we get a submarine sandwich on the way home?" And I can tell you that from that time on, for as long as he lived after that, which was about a year and a half, we never had to go through that awful business of his nausea and vomiting. And because the quality of his life was so much better, so was ours. We didn't have to see this suffering. And in fact, it led to the first study of cannabis and nausea and vomiting.
The argument for the medical use.
Hello, my name is Stuart Richland, and I've been an attorney for about 25 years, focusing on the rights of medical marijuana patients for about 5 years. If our office can be of assistance with reference to any situation you have, please give us a call at 888-420-LAW-1. That's 888-420-LAW-1. Are you making any of the following mistakes with reference to medical marijuana law? Are you unaware of federal law and the strict prohibition against growing, selling? Are you aware of state law and the requirements with reference to nonprofit, etc.? And are you in compliance with your local municipality and county rules? You may need a compliance check. You may need an expert witness. I've been qualified in court to testify with reference to the corporate structures on medical marijuana. If you need any of the services that I've described, or if you'd like to confront your city in litigation, as we've done with the Los Angeles litigation, in which my office is one of the proud, successful plaintiffs' lawyers that obtained an injunction against the City of Los Angeles marijuana ordinance, please give us a call so we can be of service. Thanks for a brave voice for freedom. Melissa Etheridge on medical cannabis.
President Obama smoked pot when he was young, he said, a fact he's never tried to hide. Here's another fact. Each day, an estimated 6,000 Americans will try marijuana for the first time. It's the most common illicit drug in the United States, with nearly 15 million people using it at least once a month. But should marijuana be legalized? Let us know what you think. All this week, we're taking a close look at that deeply divisive issue in a series of eye-opening reports that may change your mind one way or the other. It's a special 360 investigation we're calling America's High, the case for and against pot. And we begin with a growing fight over medical marijuana. As of right now, 13 states have laws that permit marijuana, also known as cannabis, to be taken for medical conditions. There's no prescription for cannabis. Instead, doctors issue a recommendation in these states. But is it safe? Is it effective? Does it actually work? Melissa Etheridge says it worked for her. The Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter turned to marijuana after she was diagnosed with breast cancer. In an interview, Etheridge tells me why she did it and how she believes it helped restore her health.
I'm actually grateful for my cancer diagnosis.
Grateful because it changed your life?
Changed my life, woke me up, totally.
Melissa Etheridge's wake-up call came in October 2004 when she was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. She immediately underwent 2 surgeries to remove the tumor and lymph nodes and then began what she calls the most painful experience of all, chemotherapy. What is the pain like?
It was just a general pain of your body dying, of all your cells dying. And so your appetite's gone, and you're nauseous. And your hair is falling out, your skin, it's like death. And the only thing I could do is lay there. I can't, it hurt to, light hurt, sound hurt. I couldn't read anything. I just laid there.
Needing something to ease the pain, she didn't want to use Vicodin or other prescription pills that could be addictive or come with side effects.
All of these things have side effects. So the steroids and the pain relief that they give you on that first day when you go into chemotherapy causes constipation. So they, well, here's a pill for the constipation, which will give you diarrhea, you know, and you get huge side effects from all of this.
Etheridge decided to combat the pain of chemotherapy with medicinal marijuana. The first time he did it, it made a big difference.
It instantly, within a minute, relieves the nausea, relieves the pain, and all of a sudden I was normal. You don't take medicinal marijuana to get high.
So you weren't?
No, you don't get a
high.
high. No, it's not a high. It's a normal, and all of a sudden I could get out of bed. I could go see my kids, and it was amazing.
Often too sick from the chemotherapy to smoke, Etheridge's wife, Tammy Lynn Michaels, would mix the marijuana into butter and spread it on Melissa's food, or she'd inhale it through a vaporizer. Medicinal marijuana works so well, Etheridge says she used it every 4 hours daily during chemotherapy. Did you ever worry about becoming addicted? Did you know, those who say, well, look, this is a gateway drug.
No, it's not at all. If you ever were on that side of it, you would understand what I mean. It's almost laughable to think that you could be addicted to this. It's not at all.
You mentioned you still have a prescription. Do you still use marijuana?
Yeah, I do. The effects of on my gastrointestinal system leaves me with I have a real low tolerance for acid of any kind, and so acid reflux is a constant problem. And I don't want to take the little pills that they give you that have all the side effects to help with that. And I do use it. I'm one of the users that would like, in a stressful situation, or maybe when I've eaten that cheese pizza with my kids, that I'll do that, and it settles. It totally, completely settles all that. So,
most people eat the cheese pizza after using marijuana.
True. Well, no,
you got it backwards.
It's not like that. I run for hope. I run to feel. I run for the truth, for all that is real.
Today, at 48, Melissa Etheridge has been cancer-free for 5 years, and she says she can't imagine having gone through the battle of her life without medicinal marijuana. She's now pushing for its legalization. There's more than, I think, 200,000 people in California who are registered to receive medicinal marijuana. Do you really believe that all those people, though, have legitimate reasons to be getting marijuana?
Who are we to say what a legitimate reason is? If it helps somebody at the end of the day, instead of drinking a couple glasses of wine, to have a few tokes, who are we to say? Why must we in this country be so judgmental about this? These people aren't hurting anybody. They're not hurting themselves.
And why? Well, it's because we live in a nanny state, and that nanny state wants to control every single thing about you, your family, your life, your finances, until you say enough is enough. Here's Judge Andrew Napolitano.
The other day I had a piece in the Wall Street Journal about whether or not the Congress could, under the Constitution, regulate health care. Obviously, it can't. Health care is not mentioned in the Constitution. The framers had doctors. The framers had hospitals. The framers got sick. The framers needed health care. It was beyond their wildest imaginings that they would be creating a government that would somehow be able to regulate this kind of human behavior. But they did give the Congress a very unique power called the power to regulate interstate commerce. Madison argued that to regulate means, and this is what it meant at the time, if you have an Oxford English Dictionary which gives you the history of the meaning of words throughout history, to regulate meant to keep regular. It meant to make sure that there is commerce between the states, not to allow the Congress to regulate everything under the sun, like the conditions of employment or the hourly wages or the materials used to make up the article that moves in interstate commerce, but just to make sure that interstate commerce is regular, to prevent, for example, the state of Pennsylvania from saying to merchants in New Jersey, you can't sell your goods here, only local merchants in Pennsylvania can sell them. That's what the Commerce Clause was written for. But Congress, of course, has used it to regulate the air that you breathe and the water that you drink and the force of the shower in your home and the size of your toilet bowl and the number of legs on your desk chair and on and on and on. Do you know that the Congress has used the Interstate Commerce Clause to make it a crime for you to speak the truth? If an FBI agent shows up at your house with a self-written search warrant, the agent will tell you, you may not tell anyone about this. You may not tell your spouse in the bedroom. You may not tell a priest in the confessional. You may not tell your lawyer in her or his office. You may not tell anyone in whom you confide. You can't even answer truthfully in a courtroom under oath whether or not you received one of these warrants without violating the Patriot Act. Well, in Bridgeport, Connecticut, 2 FBI agents showed up and delivered one of these handwritten search warrants to an 86-year-old librarian. She looked at them and said, "Who the hell are you and what the hell is this?" And she handed it to her 76-year-old assistant, whereupon they were arrested because she revealed to another human being that the FBI had come calling. They were indicted and they were tried. And your federal government attempted to put an 86-year-old librarian and her 76-year-old assistant in a federal prison for 5 years because they told people that federal agents came calling with a self-written search warrant. Do you really think you have the power to do that under the Constitution? Now, the words that I just articulated are not mine. They're the words of the very courageous federal judge to whom, fortunately for the defendants and unfortunately for the government, this case was assigned. Because after the jury was impaneled, the government decided to withdraw the charges. They somehow thought that they would lose the case. The judge was about to declare the Patriot Act unconstitutional. Now, you see how insidious the government is. If there's no case in front of a judge, then the judge loses the power to declare the law on which the case is based unconstitutional. So, fearing that this courageous federal judge in Bridgeport, Connecticut, would declare the law unconstitutional, not caring what it did to the life of the 86-year-old or the 76-year-old, not concerned with its oath to uphold the Constitution, it simply withdrew the case and went about serving self-written search warrants and telling people, if you tell anyone about it, we'll come after you because you spoke the truth. So the same government now wants to use the same powers under the Constitution to regulate health care. Let's see. Medicare broke. Social Security broke. Medicaid broke. Amtrak broke. The Post Office broke. Who in their right mind with that track record would give health care to the same people that have broken everything they've tried to manage? Ask your member of Congress, whoever she or he may be, where in the Constitution is it authorized for the federal government to regulate health care? They will not be able to answer that question. Now, these gatherings to which I am privileged to attend. Last Saturday I spoke to 25,000 people in the pouring rain in Fort Worth, Texas, and a month before that to about 10,000 people in Columbus, Ohio. These gatherings are more important than anything you can imagine, because in the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its maximum hour of danger. You are that generation. This is your role. Now is that time. Freedom must be defended from every assailant in every corner of this country, from outside the country, from inside the country, and especially from the government that wants to take it away from us.
And what has Dr. Ron Paul, defender of the Constitution, to say?
Ron Paul. Congressman, thank you for joining us. I want to start out on a couple of issues of foreign policy where you differ the most from your Republican colleagues. The president will meet this week with the Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel. If you were the president and the Prime Minister sat down and said, I want you to know that we are prepared to bomb Iran because we want to keep them from developing the aptitude for having nuclear weaponry, what would your response be?
Well, first thing, I'd like to stay out of their business. I'd like to let them do whatever they want. I don't want to interfere with what they need to do for their defense, and I don't want to interfere with Israel when they want to have peace treaties. But if I were forced to give my personal opinion about it, I would say, you know, it doesn't make any sense to bomb a country that is no threat to anybody just because they might get a weapon, and try to point out that containment worked pretty well with the Soviets, and they had 30,000, and they were rather ruthless people, killing millions and millions of their own people, and we stood them down in the Cold War. So I'd try to calm it down a little bit, but quite frankly, I don't think we should tell Israel what they should do or shouldn't do.
Speaker Gingrich, former Speaker Gingrich, as I think you may have just heard, said that he thinks the U.S. has been played for fools by Iran, that accused the president of doing nothing to try to contain Iran's nuclear ambitions, if indeed they have them. As we know, the president has tried to gather world opinion to force Iran to stop what nuclear development it's doing. We also know that he's been in the forefront of sanctions. Do you think the president has failed to do anything about this, or do you in general go along with what he's done?
Well, no, I think he gets too much involved. I think sanctions gives the motivation for them to want to have a nuclear weapon. Everybody around them, we have 45 bases around them. We can demolish them within an hour. So and the worst thing that sanctions do, and the Republicans and the Democrats both support it, the other Republican candidates, they just want war even more. But the whole thing is, there's a lot of dissension in Iran, and we should encourage it by not interfering. Once we get involved or threaten to bomb them, it becomes nationalistic. Everybody joins the Ayatollah and Ahmadinejad, and so there's a blowback, unusual circumstances, you know, and unintended consequences. So yes, our people, whether Republicans or Democrats, are well-intended, but they don't realize how much damage they do by not accomplishing what they want and causing more harm to us. So our military personnel right now are very adamant not to be involved in the bombing of Iran. It makes no sense whatsoever to our military personnel, to our CIA. Nobody who's supposed to be in the know right now, even though they're much more interventionist than I am, say that it makes no sense whatsoever to encourage or to bomb Iran right now, and that certainly would be my position.
And may I ask you, do you think the president was wrong to apologize for the accidental burning of the Koran in Afghanistan? The president said he did it to try to protect U.S. soldiers. As you heard, the former speaker thinks it was a bad idea.
No, I don't think it's wrong, but it's pretty much irrelevant. But I think the Republicans who are condemning it are a little bit over the top, too, because, you know, in 2008, some of our soldiers in Iraq took the Quran and used it for target practice, you know, just to humiliate the Muslims in that country. Ronald Reagan apologized, and what is so terrible about that, if it might calm things down, I'm personally more apologetic for invading countries who never did anything to us and occupying, disrupting, and causing thousands of deaths of our own people and causing hundreds of thousands of refugees. This is the thing that I feel sad about. What about the pictures of torture? Weren't they every bit as bad? I mean, this is what incites the hatred. This is what we have to try to understand. But, you know, I thought McNamara was rather astute when they asked him after he wrote his memoirs about, you know, the mess he caused in Vietnam because he had all these second thoughts. And they said, well, don't you think you should apologize, or do you want to apologize, you know, to the American people and to the world? He said, what good's an apology? If you make mistakes and you see this and it's stirring up trouble, why don't we change our policy? That's what he said. We should change our policy. So if we have a policy going on in the Middle East that is begging that we apologize now and then, and others condemning it because they don't think we should apologize, I think we should reassess our foreign policy. And that is what I think we are not doing, and that is why I am quite different than the other candidates and the president, that American people, I think, are sick and tired of this war and the wars going over there. We're going broke. We ran up a debt of $4 trillion in this last 10 years fighting these wars that were not legitimate, in that we were not attacked, they were not declared, and the American people, by a majority now, want us out of there.
Let me turn you to a domestic issue. I'm sure you know that tornadoes have hit a wide swath of states, particularly in the Midwest, about 10 states. The damage is enormous. You have frequently been critical of FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and the federal money that is given to some of these homeowners and those that are also other victims of storms like this. Is there a role for federal money in helping all of these citizens get their lives back together?
Not really, because it's not authorized, and there is no such thing as federal money. Federal money is just what they steal from the states and steal from you and me. So there is no federal money unless you say, well, they can print it and cause eternal problem. But to say you don't support federal money doesn't mean that you don't care about people, because FEMA is inefficient. I live on the Gulf Coast, and I got reelected constantly by criticizing FEMA because the people who had to put up with FEMA after the hurricanes had nothing but frustration and anger with them. And to point out, well, they might give you a home. Yeah, they bought a lot of trailers for Katrina, you know, and it's just so wasteful, inefficient. But, you know, the guard units and other things within the states certainly is there. The people who live in Tornado Alley, just as I live in a Hurricane Alley, they should have insurance for doing this. But under major emergency natural disasters, if there is a need, you know, for some help, such as the military to come in, that is not a tragic violation. But to say that any accident that happens in the country, send in FEMA, send in the money, the government has all this money, it's totally out of control, and it's not efficient. There's a much better way of doing this and helping it. The FEMA, I was constantly told by the people in my district, they just get in the way. They take over law enforcement, they take over and they hinder the voluntary group, and they hinder the state organization. Exactly opposite of what we should be doing.
Hi, I'm Ryan Carter, the Metro editor for the San Bernardino Sun. I'm here with Andrew Edwards, our business reporter, who today is writing about, well, the legalities of marijuana dispensaries. And Andrew, last week there was, I understand that there was an appellate court decision out of a case out of Lake Forest, and you're writing about it, you're reporting on it today, and I just want you to help tell our readers kind of why it matters to us.
Well, the funny thing, I guess, about medical marijuana has been since 1996, when the voters passed Prop 215, is really no authority in the state can really come to an agreement on how legal medical marijuana is. As far as I can figure out in one day's reporting, the 4th District Court of Appeals Division that meets in Santa Ana issued an opinion last week saying cities don't have the power to ban marijuana dispensaries because state law says dispensaries can't exist in the state. I haven't actually read the language of the opinion that came out a few months ago from the Riverside panel, but in our coverage of it, which my colleagues have addressed, it seems, as I said, the exact opposite. Cities do have this power. Of course, this is a city closer to our area, the city of Upland, which actually has its case with a dispensary called G3 Holistic set to go to the California Supreme Court. So basically two panels, different divisions of the same appellate district, have given very contradictory rulings on what cities can do as it pertains to medical marijuana. So I don't know when the state Supreme Court ruling will be forthcoming.
So Andrew, let me stop you there. I'm sorry. What have cities been doing to? I mean, my understanding is they've been trying to get rid of medical marijuana dispensaries in the Inland Empire, right?
Right. Several cities, Upland is but one, have passed ordinances which say no medical marijuana dispensaries. As far as Upland, as I understand, they use it basically in their zoning laws. It's saying it's not allowed. That's similar to what Lake Forest did, and I don't know if there's some kind of significant difference in the language of their laws, but this is what the 4th District Court of Appeals Division that meets in Santa Ana says cities can't do. Cities have the power to regulate medical marijuana, but since this is something that's been laid out in Prop 215 and subsequent legislation, there's an issue of preemption where cities cannot say no dispensaries whatsoever.
Oh, so wait a minute. So cities. So was the ruling that the ruling out of the Lake Forest case was that cities cannot use zoning
exactly
as a way of getting rid of.
Right. You can't say, by zoning, cities can't exist in our city. Of course, even that case isn't even completely resolved yet, and that the state Supreme Court may say completely otherwise. But at least this court ruling is saying, if you're a city council and you don't want medical marijuana, you cannot use your zoning laws and say this is not a permitted use.
Welcome back, and as I've said, we are live tonight. Nothing like live television when you're talking to somebody on the phone and the person you're talking about walks in the room and there you go. We are having issues tonight with our Skype. Hopefully we'll be talking to these people in just a second. 2 years ago, little Cash Hyde was diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer. He endured bouts of chemo that made him sick, made him ill. He didn't eat for 40 days and was vomiting severely. As his parents watched helplessly, as many have, they made a crucial decision. They asked doctors to take Cash off his anti-nausea and his pain medication and secretly gave him marijuana oil, cannabis oil made from marijuana. What they did was illegal. In addition, they didn't tell his doctors. Today, 3-year-old Cash is in remission and doing well. Joining me to discuss this, Dr. Stuart Gitlow, president of the American Society of Addiction Medicine. Also, criminal defense attorney Mark Eiglarsh. I brought Bob Forrest back with me in case we continue to have Skype issues because I have Cash's parents, Mike and Callie Hyde, on Skype. Dr. Gitlow, let me go to you. What issues do you have with this family feeling desperate, doing what they felt they had to do to create a quality of life intervention on behalf of their child?
Well, Drew, thank you very much for having me tonight. The issues here come down to what does a family do when their son has a critical illness and they feel as if they have no alternatives left? How are they going to deal with that and cope with that? The issue, as they start to use something like marijuana, is the question of to what lengths do we go to protect our children? Do we go to the length of picking a Schedule I controlled substance that has no known medical qualities to it? The analogy
let me interrupt you and just say, I mean, if it's just for quality of life, and we're using Schedule I drugs like opiates, like painkillers, what's wrong with this Schedule I drug if it helps somebody feel better?
Well, we're not talking about quality of life here. We're talking about trying to save a 2- or 3-year-old. This is an issue where the goal would be for him to have a normal life and a normal length life.
Let me ask the parents what they were thinking when they went ahead and did this. Guys, was it just because you got tired of seeing him suffer and you wanted him to feel better? I'm going to ask Dad. He's got the phone.
I watched Cash's heart stop several times after doctors gave him Phenergan and fentanyl. I watched my son suffer for over 40 days starving to death, and I looked at the cocktails they're giving these kids. Like his mother said before, these doctors are killing our youth with poison. The medications that he will refer our kids to are highly toxic, addictive, and deadly. Medical cannabis, or cannabis, whatever you want to call it, is the safest, most therapeutic medicine known to man, and that comes from
guys, the connection here is barely discernible. Let me keep seeing if they technically can help with that, because I do want to talk to your wife in a second. My understanding is she's an RN. And I have a question let me ask to you, Mark. My issue with this more than anything else, Mark Eiglarsh, is we have an RN. She has a license. She understands how hospitals operate. She's found a medication that helped her, let's say, or helped her sister. Made me feel good. And she walks in the hospital and just gives it to somebody because it worked for them? Is that how hospitals should operate, or do you share my concerns, Mark?
Yeah, this is a tough one. First of all, even they know, and they've admitted publicly, that what they're doing is unlawful. No question they're violating federal law. But let me just say this. If we're talking about my child, and I was told 6 to 7 times, you know, we're going to stop doing this because there's nothing more that we can do to save him, I would try whatever it took to get even an hour more with him. Now, it turned out it worked. And the California Medical Association supports, to some extent, this concept of giving THC, in that in one study, 25 to 30% of mice rejected the cancer after they had been injected with THC. So while, again, we're talking about mice and it hasn't been, you know, widespread approval amongst the medical association, there is an indication that it might work.
Dr. Galo, let me go back to you. Let's say it is a quality of life issue and it is a terminal case. Do you share my concerns? It's not, again, so much about making the child comfortable. It's that somebody brings in a substance from the outside while kids under care. The doctors don't know. I mean, who knows how the care could go bad if people just start administering their own drugs, illicit or illicit, to somebody in a hospital? Isn't that a concern?
Well, let's go back for a second. I don't think that this demonstrates that the drug worked. What it demonstrates is that Cash got better at about the same time that he was administered marijuana. So this is an experiment with one person being tested. And basically what we have is an individual who was given multiple other types of treatment, who got better at about the same time that he was given the marijuana. That doesn't mean the marijuana led to his improvement. It means he got better at about the same time.
Right. And, Mike, you're on the phone, I think, with me now.
Yeah.
Can you try your phone line? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. What I'd like to say to that guy is I pulled Cashy off of Ativan, Zofran, methadone, morphine, oxycodone, oxycontin, ketamine, and Dilaudid in a 2-week period with medical cannabis. After he hadn't eaten for over 40 days, I started feeding him
Mike,
again.
maybe that alone is what made him better. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
exactly.
maybe just
And
getting him off all that stuff.
if I wouldn't have made those doctors wean him off those drugs, he would have died.
Okay, let me talk to your wife for a
These
second.
doctors are killing our children. That is the difference we're talking about.
Let me
These
talk
kids
to
are
Callie.
giving, who would give a kid morphine?
Let me talk to Callie. I get you. Let me talk to Callie for a second. And listen, they've got a child who's has an advanced cancer on life support. They're trying to make him comfortable. They're not trying to kill anybody. Callie, let me talk to you. You're an RN, right?
Yeah, this is Callie.
Callie. Okay. Callie, do you understand my concerns about people coming into the hospital and just administering substances, illicit or illicit, without the team's involvement? You know what I mean? If you worked in hospitals, it can really make things unravel if the team is not there taking care of the patient.
I do understand the controversy with, you know, coming in and giving our son, you know, cannabis. But, you know, he was laying there dying, shaking, shivering. His skin was peeling. He was vomiting every 2 hours. He was vomiting, you know. He couldn't
Let me ask the question, Callie, I get it. Let me ask the question a different way. Let's say you had medication XYZ, and it's legal, and you describe that same scene to us. You just bring that in from the outside and give it because you wanted your child better no matter what. You go to any length, even if it means upsetting how a hospital functions. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Hold on one second. Bob, you've been sitting here listening to this. Do you have any
you know, they're killing our children. This
Hold
is
on.
The most therapeutic.
We weren't there. Listen, people are trying to do their job and trying to. The child is better because of proton beam and chemotherapy. We know that, too, because that's what they could expect. Yes, and all this other stuff made him sick, it sounds like. Bob, your point.
Well, the thing is, I love hearing him laugh in the background, and that he's alive, and it's a baby, and it's wonderful. And to politicize this is what's really being done, and it's, you know, I'm just happy he's alive. I, too, agree with the father that said, you know, the list of drugs that he's on compared to medical marijuana,
Okay.
Come on now.
Okay, fair enough.
I hate to be the guy that's against.
No. I'm not saying that, but I think everybody wants this child better. There's not this sinister people here. So we got to take another break. We're going to keep this conversation going. Please stay with us. We'll be back in just a minute. Thanks for joining us again. We are live. This is an important conversation. We're speaking with Mike and Callie Hyde. They're parents of a 3-year-old who's currently in remission from a brain tumor. Mike and Callie gave him marijuana oil, cannabis oil, after Cash almost died after chemotherapy. Dr. Gitlow, you say the potential for this, I'm going to try to get everyone to ring in on this. You say the potential negatives here are substantial. How?
Marijuana is dangerous, Drew. The bottom line is that in the developing brain, it causes problems with attention, with focus, with concentration, and with long-term cognitive abilities. We don't want to see children administered a drug that's going to cause them to, and bottom line, not be smart later in life. The stereotype of the burnt-out marijuana user is not there for no reason.
Mark, I want to get your take on this. You've heard the conversation. Any more thoughts?
Yes. Death is dangerous. This kid was dying. This wasn't a first resort. This was a last resort. Desperate times call for desperate measures. And while I'm not advocating parents introducing THC as a first resort to their children, in this one instance, they were literally watching their son die. And prosecutors can use their discretion in a case like this and not necessarily have to bring charges.
And Bob, you said that we politicized this drug too much, and and Mike is being political in this. I'm going to give him last word because he is in this situation, and we are lucky enough to have the child with us. Mike, I do want to give you the last words, but I try to have conversations about marijuana without it being political because there's such energy around it. We can't, both sides can't be rational. I want us all to be rational about it. Help us.
I understand that. I understand that. All I can say is we went through our 30 rounds of proton radiation, and Cashy did not use one nausea or pain medication. Cannabis is a patented neuroprotectant and antioxidant. Every cancer patient has the right to that. Cashy survived a lot of stuff, yes. Cannabis is a long, hard journey, and I truly question the ethics and the morals of any doctor that can say that cannabis is dangerous. There is not one proven death to cannabis. You want to talk dangerous? Talk about a kid on morphine. Talk about a kid on ketamine or oxycodone or Dilaudid or Ativan. I replaced all those drugs with cannabis oil.
Mike,
talk to Dr.
I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you. I'm running out of time. Our prayers stay with you, my friend. I'm just so glad your child is doing better. That's whatever it took, my friend. Congratulations.
Oh, how time flies when you're having fun. This program is copyright 2012, Stuart Richland. All rights reserved. No claim is made to those clips that are used pursuant to the fair use provisions of the Copyright Act. And this program is not intended to replace your own relationship with your legal, medical, and financial advisors. And no attorney-client relationship is created hereby. If you would like to create an attorney-client relationship, give me a call at 888-420-LAW1. Take good care. Bye-bye. The music used in this program is copyright 2011. Ridiculites. Used with permission.